Did you kill your daughter?
No, that's an emphatic no. I mean, the ludicrous thing is what's been purported from Portugal is that Madeleine died in the apartment by an accident and we hid her body. Well, when did she have the accident and died? Because the only time she was left unattended was when we were at dinner. So if she died then, how could we have disposed or hidden her body, when there was an immediate threat? It's just nonsense. So, and if she died when we were in the apartment or fell and did, why would we cover that up?
And that gets even more ludicrous, that we've obviously hidden her somewhere incredibly well where nobody's found her. And we hid her so well that we then decided we'd move her in the car, which we hired weeks later. And, it's just ridiculous.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. As a seasoned crime analyst and storyteller, I'm here to unravel the complex details of true crime cases and present them in a way that's both engaging and easy to understand. Today, we're diving deep into the latest developments in the Madeleine McCann case. It was a warm evening on the Algarve coast of Portugal, May 3rd, 2007, as dusk settled. At the Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz, 3 young children were sleeping peacefully in apartment 5A, while their parents were having dinner just 55 meters away. By all accounts, it was the perfect night of a perfect family vacation, until it wasn't. Around 10 p.m., screams tore through the peaceful resort. A little girl had been kidnapped. Those 3 words would ignite the most highly publicized missing person case of the 21st century and forever alter the lives of everyone involved. 3-year-old Madeleine McCann had vanished from her bed without a trace. Her twin siblings, Sean and Amelie, remained asleep in their beds nearby. The window was open, the front door was unlocked, and a family's nightmare was just beginning. For 16 years, Madeleine McCann's disappearance has captivated the world. We've heard the official story countless times: a possible abduction through an open window, parents who periodically checked on their children throughout the evening, and a resort with poor security. The Portuguese police investigation, the media frenzy, and the international manhunt have all been endlessly analyzed. But what if there's more to this story than meets the eye? What if on that fateful night, Kate McCann discovered something about her husband that changed everything? What if her frantic reaction wasn't just about finding her daughter missing, but about realizing something far more unsettling? Tonight, we're going to re-examine the evidence from a different perspective. We'll explore the inconsistencies in testimonies, the strange behaviors that followed, and a possibility that has been whispered about but rarely explored in depth. What if Kate McCann discovered her husband's involvement in their daughter's disappearance and made the devastating choice to protect him? This isn't about sensationalism. It's about exploring all possibilities in a case that has left investigators baffled for over a decade and a half. It's about asking the questions that others have been too afraid to voice. The perfect British family, the respected doctors, the devout Catholics, the grieving parents who launched a global search. What if this carefully constructed image hid a darker truth? Before we go deeper into this complex and heartbreaking case, take a moment to hit that like button and let me know where you're watching from today. Your engagement helps this channel reach others who are passionate about uncovering the truth in unsolved cases like Madeleine's. Tonight, we'll walk through the events leading up to that fateful evening, examine the evidence with fresh eyes, and consider a theory that might explain why, after all these years and millions of dollars spent on investigations, we still don't know what happened to Madeleine McCann. This is Criminal Instinct, and this is the story of what happens when a mother discovers a terrible truth and chooses to hide it. To understand the events that unfolded in Portugal, we must first understand who Gerry and Kate McCann were before they became household names synonymous with tragedy. In the medical community of Leicester, England, the McCanns represented the pinnacle of professional achievement. Both born in 1968, they had built impressive careers that earned them respect from colleagues and patients alike. Kate Marie McCann, née Healy, grew up in Huyton near Liverpool. She was a bright student with ambitions that led her to the University of Dundee's medical program. After graduating in 1992, she initially specialized in obstetrics and gynecology, a field where she witnessed the miracle of birth daily. Perhaps this experience deepened her desire for children of her own. Later, Kate switched to anesthetics before settling into general practice, a career choice that offered more predictable hours and the work-life balance a growing family would need. Gerry McCann's path was equally impressive. Born in Glasgow, Scotland, his academic credentials were impeccable. He earned a BSc in Physiology and Sports Science in 1989, followed by a medical degree in 1992 and a doctorate in 2002. By the time Madeleine disappeared, Gerry had established himself as a consultant cardiologist at Glenfield Hospital in Leicester and was on his way to becoming a professor of cardiac imaging at the University of Leicester. His colleagues described him as methodical, precise, and ambitious, qualities that serve a cardiologist well when lives hang in the balance. Their paths crossed in Glasgow in 1993. They were two young doctors navigating the demanding world of medicine. Their shared Catholic faith provided common ground, and their complementary personalities, Kate's warmth balancing Gerry's analytical nature, created a foundation for both romance and partnership. They married in 1998, a union that merged not just their lives, but their professional aspirations. For 5 years, the McCanns enjoyed the rhythms of married life, building their careers and planning for the family they both wanted. Then, on May 12, 2003, their firstborn arrived, Madeleine Beth McCann, a child whose distinctive blue-green eyes and small mark in her right iris would later be recognized worldwide. But in those early days, she was simply their miracle, the center of their universe. Friends described the McCanns as devoted parents who approached child rearing with the same meticulous care they brought to their medical practices. Kate reduced her working hours to part-time, balancing her career with motherhood. Gerry, despite his demanding schedule, prioritized family time. Their home in Rothley, Leicestershire, became the center of a life built on routine, stability, and the ordinary joys of raising a child. In 2005, their family grew with the birth of twins, Sean and Amelie. Now parents to 3 children under 2, the McCanns' lives became a carefully orchestrated ballet of professional responsibilities and parental duties. They hired a nanny to help manage the household when both were working, and their extended family often stepped in to provide extra support. By all accounts, the McCanns embodied upper-middle-class British success. Prestigious careers, a comfortable home in a picturesque village, 3 beautiful children, and a wide circle of friends who shared their values and lifestyle. Their social media posts and family photos painted a picture of contentment, summer barbecues, Christmas celebrations, and the everyday moments that make up a family's history. But beneath this perfect exterior were cracks beginning to form. Some who knew the couple have suggested that the pressures of balancing 2 medical careers with the demands of raising 3 young children had started to take a toll. Kate later admitted in her book that Madeleine had been experiencing sleep disturbances before the Portugal trip, sometimes waking up and making her way into her parents' bedroom at night. Was the Portugal vacation meant to be a reset for a family under strain? The McCanns had organized the trip with 7 other families, most of them also medical professionals with children. The group, later dubbed the Tapas 7 by the media, included close friends who were at the same life stage as the McCanns and understood the delicate balance they were all trying to maintain. What's particularly striking about the McCanns is how ordinary they were before tragedy turned them into reluctant celebrities. They were not people who sought the spotlight. They were simply parents who made a decision, one they would replay in their minds countless times in the years to come, to leave their children sleeping while they dined with friends nearby. That decision would catapult them from anonymity to infamy overnight, subjecting their every action, reaction, and relationship to intense public scrutiny. The composed, articulate doctors who appeared on television pleading for their daughter's return became figures of both sympathy and suspicion, their marriage tested in ways few could imagine. Before we continue with the events in Portugal that changed everything, I'm curious, what time is it where you're watching? Let me know in the comments. It's always fascinating to see how this community spans different time zones, united by our shared interest in understanding these complex cases. Now, let's turn to the fateful vacation that would forever alter the trajectory of the McCann family's life and launch one of the most enduring mysteries of our time. Praia da Luz sits like a postcard on Portugal's southern Algarve coast, a picturesque village where whitewashed buildings contrast against the deep blue of the Atlantic Ocean. In late April 2007, this sleepy resort town welcomed the McCanns and their friends for what should have been a relaxing spring getaway. The Ocean Club Resort, with its family-friendly amenities and casual atmosphere, promised the perfect balance of relaxation for the adults and entertainment for the children. The resort itself was not a single building, but a collection of apartments and facilities spread across several blocks of the village. This layout, while charming, created a unique security situation. Unlike a traditional hotel with internal corridors and controlled access points, the Ocean Club's apartments opened directly onto public streets and walkways. Apartment 5A, where the McCanns stayed, was particularly vulnerable. A ground floor unit with multiple access points, including patio doors that opened onto a street-facing terrace. The apartment's interior was simple but functional. A combined living and dining area, a small kitchen, a bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. The children's bedroom, where Madeleine and the twins slept, was at the front of the apartment, next to the main entrance and the exterior window that would later become a focal point of the investigation. Each day at the resort followed a similar pattern for the vacationing families. Mornings began with breakfast in their respective apartments before the children were dropped off at the resort's kids club around 9:30 a.m. While the children enjoyed supervised activities, the adults were free to play tennis, swim, or simply relax. The families would reconvene for lunch, often followed by time at the pool, where Madeleine, described as a confident swimmer for her age, particularly enjoyed splashing with her father. As evening approached, the adults would retrieve their children from the kids' club, bathe them, and get them ready for bed. Then came the routine that would later be scrutinized by investigators and armchair detectives alike. The adults-only dinner at the resort's tapas restaurant. The Tapas 7, as they would later be known, consisted of the McCanns and 3 other couples. Fiona and David Payne, along with Fiona's mother, Diane Webster, Matthew and Rachel Oldfield, and Russell O'Brien and Jane Tanner. All were professionals in their 30s and 40s, most with medical backgrounds, and all were parents to young children. They had booked a large table at the Tapas restaurant for 8:30 p.m. each evening of their stay. The restaurant was approximately 180 feet from apartment 5A, about a 30-second walk across the resort's pool area. From their table, the adults couldn't directly see their apartments, but the proximity allowed them to establish a system of regular checks on the sleeping children. According to their later statements, the group had arranged a rotation where 1 or more adults would leave the table every 20-30 minutes to check on all the children. This arrangement wasn't unusual at the Ocean Club. The resort even offered a babysitting service and a night creche where children could sleep under supervision. But the McCanns, like many parents, opted for their own monitoring system. They later explained that they felt this approach was safe, given the short distance and the frequency of their checks. May 3rd, 2007, the 5th day of their vacation, started like any other. Breakfast, kids club, tennis lessons for the adults, lunch, and an afternoon by the pool. A photograph taken at 2:29 p.m. shows Madeleine sitting by the pool with her father and sister, her feet dangling in the water, squinting slightly in the bright Portuguese sun. It would be the last documented image of her before her disappearance. As evening approached, the routine continued. Kate bathed the children while Gerry played tennis with a resort instructor. Around 6 p.m., the children had dinner in the apartment. At approximately 7 p.m., the bedtime routine began. Stories, teeth brushing, and tucking in. By 7:30 p.m., Madeleine and the twins were in bed in the children's bedroom. Gerry and Kate changed for dinner, taking a moment to relax with a glass of wine before heading to meet their friends at the tapas restaurant. They arrived around 8:35 p.m., slightly late for their 8:30 reservation. The evening was mild, the conversation flowing as easily as the wine. To anyone observing, they were simply a group of friends, enjoying a well-deserved break from the demands of parenting and professional life. No one could have predicted that in less than 2 hours, this ordinary vacation scene would transform into the epicenter of an international investigation. No one imagined that the decisions made that evening, decisions that seemed reasonable at the time, would be dissected and debated for years to come. As the adults settled into their meal, the clock was ticking toward the moment that would forever divide the McCanns' lives into before and after. The evening of May 3rd, 2007, unfolded with the mundane rhythm of a family vacation until it suddenly, irrevocably, didn't. To understand what might have happened to Madeleine McCann, we need to examine the timeline with forensic precision, acknowledging both what is known and what remains contested. 5:30 p.m. Kate and Gerry McCann returned to apartment 5A with their 3 children after a day at the resort's pool. This moment is documented in the last known photograph of Madeleine, her legs dangling in the pool, her father and sister beside her. 6 p.m. The children had dinner inside the apartment. Kate later recalled that Madeleine was tired but in good spirits, asking to be carried back from the pool earlier, which was unusual for the energetic 3-year-old. 7 p.m. The McCanns began the children's bedtime routine. Madeleine was bathed, her pink pajamas with the Eeyore character put on, teeth brushed, and bedtime stories read. 7:30 p.m. All 3 children were placed in bed in the front bedroom of apartment 5A. The twins, then 2 years old, slept in travel cots, while Madeleine was in a single bed. According to the McCanns, all 3 fell asleep quickly. 8:30 p.m. The McCanns left the apartment, leaving the door unlocked but closed. They later explained this decision as a safety measure, allowing them quicker access for checks than if they had to go around to the front of the building and use a key. They walked approximately 180 feet to the tapas restaurant, where their friends were already seated. 8:35 p.m. 8:45 p.m. The McCanns joined their friends at the table. Drink orders were placed and conversation began. The restaurant staff later confirmed their arrival time, though they noted that the group's reservation was actually for 8:30 p.m. 9:05 p.m. Gerry McCann left the table to perform the first check on the children. He entered the apartment through the unlocked patio doors, observed all 3 children sleeping in the bedroom, and returned to the restaurant. The entire check took approximately 5 to 10 minutes. This is where the timeline begins to contain discrepancies that have never been fully resolved. Jane Tanner, one of the Tapas 7, reported leaving the restaurant around 9:15 p.m. to check on her own children. As she walked along the road outside the apartments, she claimed to have seen a man carrying a child in pajamas walking away from the direction of the McCann's apartment. This sighting, initially considered a potential abductor, was later identified by Scotland Yard in 2013 as likely being another British tourist carrying his own child back from the resort's night creche. However, this identification has been questioned as the timing and description details don't fully align. 9:30 p.m. Matthew Oldfield, another friend dining with the group, volunteered to check on the McCann children while checking on his own. By his account, he entered the McCann's apartment, but only listened at the children's bedroom door without actually looking inside. He reported hearing no sounds and assumed all 3 children were still sleeping. This check has been scrutinized extensively. If Madeleine was already missing at this point, why didn't Oldfield notice? If he didn't actually see the children, is it possible that Madeleine was already gone? Or if he did look but didn't report it, what might he have seen? 10 o'clock p.m., Kate McCann left the table to check on the children. Upon entering the apartment, she noticed the children's bedroom door was open wider than she remembered leaving it. As she went to close it, a gust of wind slammed it shut. This detail, the breeze in the room, immediately alerted her that something was wrong. Kate checked the room and discovered Madeleine's bed empty. The twins remained asleep in their travel cots, seemingly undisturbed. According to Kate's later statements, she searched the apartment, looking under beds and in closets, before running back to the restaurant, famously crying out, "They've taken her." 10:10 p.m. Gerry and their friends immediately left the restaurant and began searching the apartment complex and surrounding areas. Resort staff were alerted, and an initial search was organized. 10:30 p.m. The resort manager called the local police Guardia Nacional Republicana, or GNR, reporting a missing child. This was the first official notification of Madeleine's disappearance. 11 o'clock p.m. The first police officers arrived at the scene. By this time, resort staff and guests had been searching for nearly an hour, inadvertently contaminating potential evidence. 11:10 p.m. The GNR officers conducted a brief search of the apartment and surrounding areas, but did not establish a proper crime scene perimeter. No forensic team was called immediately. Midnight. The Policia Judiciaria, Portugal's criminal investigation agency, was finally notified. However, no PJ officers arrived at the scene until the following morning. Throughout the night, the search continued with resort staff, local police, and volunteers combing the area with flashlights. The McCanns remained in their apartment, making phone calls to family and British authorities. Notably, they also contacted the media, a decision that would later be questioned by investigators who wondered why their first instinct included media outreach, rather than focusing solely on the search. By dawn on May 4th, the case had already begun its transformation from a local missing child incident to an international media sensation. The first news crews arrived early that morning, and by afternoon, Madeleine's photo was being broadcast worldwide. The initial police response has been widely criticized as inadequate. Border alerts weren't issued until 12 hours after Madeleine was reported missing. The apartment wasn't properly sealed as a crime scene until the following day. Bedding wasn't collected for forensic analysis. Fingerprints weren't taken from the window until days later. CCTV footage from nearby businesses wasn't immediately secured, and some was overwritten before investigators requested it. These early missteps created evidentiary gaps that have never been filled, allowing multiple theories to flourish in the absence of conclusive proof. The McCann's reactions during these first hours have been scrutinized as intensely as the police response. Some observers noted their composure as unusual for parents of a missing child. Others pointed to their immediate media strategy as suspiciously sophisticated. Defenders countered that both Kate and Gerry, as doctors, were trained to remain calm in crisis situations, and that their media outreach was a logical attempt to spread awareness of their daughter's disappearance as quickly as possible. What's undeniable is the effectiveness of their initial response in capturing global attention. Within 24 hours, Madeleine McCann wasn't just a missing child. She was the missing child, her face recognized around the world, her story leading newscasts from London to New York to Tokyo. If you're finding this story as compelling as I do, make sure you're subscribed to Criminal Instinct for more true crime deep dives. We explore cases like Madeleine's with the attention to detail and nuance they deserve, always seeking truth in the shadows of tragedy. As dawn broke on May 4th, no one could have predicted that 16 years later, we would still be asking the same question. What happened to Madeleine McCann? The first hours after Madeleine's disappearance set the tone for an investigation plagued by missteps, jurisdictional conflicts, and communication breakdowns. When local police arrived at apartment 5A around 11:10 p.m., they encountered a scene already compromised by well-meaning but disastrous actions. Dozens of resort staff and guests had trampled through the apartment and surrounding areas during the initial search, destroying potential evidence and contaminating the crime scene. The Polícia Judiciária, PJ, Portugal's criminal investigation agency, didn't establish a proper perimeter until the following morning. By then, crucial forensic evidence, fingerprints, footprints, fibers, had been irreparably compromised. Basic protocols were overlooked. Bedding wasn't properly examined. The children's bedroom window, a potential entry point, wasn't dusted for prints until days later. And CCTV footage from nearby businesses wasn't immediately secured. Perhaps most damaging was the failure to alert border control until 12 hours after Madeleine was reported missing. By then, if an abductor had intended to transport her out of Portugal, they'd had ample time to cross into Spain or reach international waters. These initial errors would haunt the investigation for years to come, creating gaps in evidence that allowed speculation to flourish and complicated efforts to establish a definitive timeline of events. The investigation took a dramatic turn in late July 2007 when two cadaver dogs brought in from the UK alerted to the scent of human decomposition in the McCann's apartment and rental car. The dogs' reactions, particularly in the car, which the McCanns hadn't rented until 24 days after Madeleine's disappearance, shifted the focus of the investigation toward the parents themselves. On September 7, 2007, Kate and Gerry McCann were formally named arguidos, or official suspects, by Portuguese police. The theory emerging from Portuguese authorities suggested that Madeleine had died accidentally in the apartment, perhaps from an overdose of sedatives, and that her parents had disposed of her body to avoid negligence charges. This theory was based on several elements: the cadaver dog's alerts, trace DNA evidence found in the rental car, later determined to be inconclusive, and perceived inconsistencies in the McCann's accounts. Particularly scrutinized were Kate's fingerprints on the window, which she claimed had been opened by an intruder, and the varying accounts of how often and by whom the children were checked throughout the evening. The forensic evidence, however, proved far less damning than initially suggested. The DNA samples analyzed by the UK's Forensic Science Service were determined to be partial and degraded, matching 15 out of 19 markers of Madeleine's DNA profile. Not enough for a definitive identification in a case of this magnitude. Furthermore, as the McCann's defenders pointed out, finding Madeleine's DNA in locations where she had lived and traveled would be expected, not evidence of wrongdoing. By July 2008, Portuguese authorities acknowledged the lack of conclusive evidence and officially closed their investigation, lifting the McCann's arguido status. The case file, now public, revealed the extent of leads pursued and abandoned, witnesses interviewed and discounted, and theories considered and rejected. Meanwhile, the British investigation, initially supportive of Portuguese efforts, had evolved into a parallel inquiry. Leicester Police, Scotland Yard, and eventually the Metropolitan Police, through Operation Grange, launched in 2011, pursued their own lines of inquiry, often reaching different conclusions than their Portuguese counterparts. This jurisdictional divide created a fractured investigation where information wasn't always shared effectively, leads were pursued redundantly or not at all, and the overall strategy lacked cohesion. Operation Grange alone has cost British taxpayers over $12 million and identified dozens of persons of interest, yet has failed to produce a breakthrough. Throughout this investigative morass, the media played a pivotal and often problematic role. The McCann's case generated unprecedented coverage, by some estimates, more column inches than the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami that killed over 230,000 people. This disproportionate attention transformed a family tragedy into a global obsession. British tabloids particularly engaged in what was later described as a feeding frenzy, publishing unverified leaks, speculative theories, and outright fabrications. Headlines screamed accusations. Maddie killed by sleeping pills, DNA puts parents in frame, and blood in hire car. The McCanns would later successfully sue several publications for libel, but the damage to their reputation and to the integrity of the investigation had been done. The public, consuming this sensationalized coverage, divided into camps, those convinced of the McCanns' innocence, those suspicious of their involvement, and those somewhere in between. Internet forums and social media platforms became battlegrounds where amateur sleuths dissected every statement, expression, and action of the grieving parents. Kate McCann especially became a target for criticism. Her composed demeanor in press conferences was interpreted as cold. Her displays of emotion were deemed performative. She was scrutinized for wearing makeup, for not wearing makeup, for losing weight, and for how she spoke about Madeleine. The impossible standard set for her appropriate grief response revealed more about public expectations of motherhood than about any evidence in the case. Gerry, while not immune to criticism, escaped the worst of this gendered scrutiny. His medical precision when discussing the case was often interpreted as strength rather than emotional detachment. This disparity in public perception created additional strain on a marriage already under unimaginable pressure. As the investigation stalled and media attention waxed and waned, the McCanns launched their own efforts. They established a private fund, hired multiple private investigation firms, and maintained a public campaign to keep Madeleine's case in the spotlight. These efforts, while understandable, sometimes complicated official investigations and created tensions with law enforcement agencies. Before we continue exploring the specific theories suggested by our title, I'm curious. What's the weather like where you are? Our criminal instinct community spans the globe, and it's always fascinating to see how we're connected despite different climates and time zones. Drop a comment below and let us know. Now, let's examine the central question of our investigation. What if Kate McCann discovered something about her husband that night? Something she chose to hide. The title of our investigation poses a provocative question. What if Kate McCann discovered her husband's involvement in their daughter's disappearance and made the devastating choice to protect him? This isn't a theory promoted by official investigators, nor is it one I'm presenting as fact. Rather, it's an exploration of a possibility that might explain certain inconsistencies and behaviors that have puzzled observers for years. Let's examine the foundation for such a theory by looking at the timeline of that evening through this alternative lens. By all accounts, Gerry McCann checked on the children at approximately 9:05 p.m., reporting that all three were sleeping soundly. At 9:30 p.m., Matthew Oldfield, one of the Tappers 7, conducted a check but only listened at the children's bedroom door without actually entering or seeing Madeleine. Kate's check came at approximately 10 o'clock p.m. when she discovered Madeleine missing. This creates a critical window of approximately 55 minutes, during which no one visually confirmed Madeleine's presence. What if something happened during Gerry's check? An accident, a moment of frustration, or some other incident that resulted in harm to Madeleine? Several witness statements from that night contain curious inconsistencies. A staff member at the Ocean Club reported seeing Gerry carrying a child matching Madeleine's description toward the beach around 9:15 p.m. When questioned, Gerry explained he was carrying one of his friend's children back from the evening childcare facility. However, none of the Tapas 7 had children in evening childcare that night. Another witness, Irish tourist Martin Smith and his family, reported seeing a man carrying a young girl matching Madeleine's description around 10 o'clock p.m., approximately 500 yards from the McCann's apartment. Smith initially didn't make the connection to the McCann case, but months later, while watching television footage of the McCanns returning to the UK, he was struck by the similarity between Gerry McCann's gait and carrying style and the man he had seen that night. These sightings, if accurate, placed Gerry away from the tapas restaurant during times when others believed he was present. Could Kate have learned something about these discrepancies later that night? The apartment itself yielded puzzling evidence. Despite claims of a break-in through the children's bedroom window, forensic examination showed no evidence of forced entry. The window and shutters, which Kate claimed were open when she discovered Madeleine missing, showed no fingerprints other than Kate's own. Unusual if an intruder had manipulated them. Perhaps most telling were the cadaver dog's alerts. These specially trained dogs indicated the presence of human decomposition in 5 locations within apartment 5A. Behind the sofa in the living room, in the main bedroom, in the garden, on Kate's clothes, and on Madeleine's stuffed toy. They later alerted to the McCann's rental car as well. While the forensic evidence derived from these locations proved inconclusive, the pattern of alerts suggests that a body remained in the apartment long enough for decomposition odor to develop, typically at least 90 minutes to 2 hours. This timeline contradicts the McCann's account of discovering Madeleine missing immediately and alerting authorities. If we consider the possibility that Madeleine died accidentally in the apartment, perhaps from a fall behind the sofa where the cadaver dog alerted, and that Gerry discovered this during his 9:05 p.m. to check, it creates a scenario where he might have had time to move her body before Kate's check at 10 o'clock p.m. In this theoretical scenario, Kate's discovery at 10 o'clock p.m. wouldn't have been that Madeleine was missing, but that something had happened to her and Gerry had removed her from the apartment. Faced with this devastating realization, Kate would have had minutes to make an impossible choice: reveal what she had learned, or protect her husband and remaining children from the consequences. The psychological burden of such a choice would be unimaginable. If Kate did discover her husband's involvement and choose to participate in a cover-up, she would have been operating under extreme duress, shock, grief, fear, and the instinctive desire to protect what remained of her family. Trauma experts note that people in such situations often exhibit behaviors that seem counterintuitive to outside observers. The calm demeanor that many found suspicious in Kate could be explained as dissociation, a psychological defense mechanism that creates emotional distance from overwhelming trauma. Her precise recollections and controlled public appearances might reflect not calculation, but a desperate attempt to maintain control in an uncontrollable situation. This theory might also explain certain behaviors in the aftermath. The McCann's immediate focus on a media campaign rather than remaining in Portugal to assist with searches, their careful control of the narrative through selected interviews, their reluctance to participate in a police reconstruction of the night, and their refusal to answer certain questions when re-interviewed by Portuguese authorities. It could also explain why, despite years of investigation and millions spent, no trace of an abductor has ever been conclusively identified. No DNA, no fingerprints, no credible sightings of suspicious individuals entering or leaving the apartment. just a family forever changed by a tragedy that remains officially unsolved. To be absolutely clear, this theory remains speculation. The McCanns have maintained their innocence throughout, endured intense scrutiny, and dedicated their lives to finding their daughter. The official position of British authorities through Operation Grange continues to be that Madeleine was abducted by a stranger. If you have theories about what happened that night, or thoughts on the scenario I've presented, share them in the comments below. This community's insights often bring new perspectives to these complex cases. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann fundamentally transformed how missing children cases are handled, investigated, and portrayed in media worldwide. What began as one family's tragedy evolved into a case study that has influenced police procedures, international cooperation protocols, and public awareness campaigns across continents. Perhaps the most significant institutional change came in the form of improved cross-border communication systems. The initial 12-hour delay in alerting border authorities in Portugal highlighted a critical gap in emergency response protocols. In the years following, the European Union strengthened its rapid alert mechanisms, implementing the Child Rescue Alert System, modeled after America's Amber Alert. This system enables immediate, coordinated responses across national boundaries when a child goes missing under suspicious circumstances. Forensic practices also evolved in response to the case's shortcomings. The contamination of the McCann apartment crime scene became a cautionary tale taught in police academies. Law enforcement agencies worldwide developed more stringent protocols for preserving evidence in cases involving missing children, with particular emphasis on securing locations before allowing family members or other civilians to enter. The case also spotlighted the double-edged sword of media involvement in investigations. While the unprecedented coverage helped make Madeleine's face recognizable globally, it also created investigative challenges. False sightings overwhelmed police resources. Sensationalized reporting compromised witness reliability, and the pressure for quick results led to rushed conclusions. Today, many police departments have developed specific media strategies for high-profile missing persons cases, balancing the benefits of public awareness with the integrity of the investigation. The search for Madeleine continues, though its nature has evolved dramatically. Operation Grange, the Metropolitan Police's dedicated investigation, has followed hundreds of leads across multiple countries since its 2011 launch. Despite costing British taxpayers over $12 million, the operation has yet to determine conclusively what happened to Madeleine. In June 2020, German prosecutors announced they were investigating a convicted sex offender, Christian Bruckner, in connection with the case, describing their evidence as concrete, though not yet sufficient for charges. This development represented the most significant breakthrough in years. Yet, like so many leads before it, it has yet to provide definitive answers. The investigation continues in this pattern. Moments of apparent progress followed by prolonged periods of frustrating stasis. Throughout it all, Kate and Gerry McCann have maintained their campaign to find their daughter. Their approach has evolved from the frantic early days of global media tours to a more measured, strategic advocacy. The official Find Madeleine campaign, funded through donations and the proceeds from Kate's 2011 book, Madeleine, continues to employ private investigators and maintain a hotline for tips. Beyond their daughter's case, the McCanns have become reluctant advocates for missing children globally. They consulted on the implementation of the European alert system and have supported numerous families facing similar tragedies. Their influence led to the UK government's creation of a child rescue alert system and contributed to reforms in how British tourists are supported when crimes occur abroad. The psychological impact on the McCanns themselves has been profound. Their marriage, subjected to unimaginable strain, has endured despite statistics showing that most couples separate after the loss of a child. They've raised their twins, Sean and Amelie, now teenagers, while carrying the weight of their sister's absence and the public scrutiny that comes with it. In rare interviews, they've acknowledged the difficulty of balancing normal family life with their ongoing search and the psychological toll of living with unresolved grief. Madeleine would now be an adult, a reality that adds another layer of complexity to the case. Age progression images periodically released by investigators show how she might look today, a poignant reminder of all the years lost to uncertainty. The McCann case remains unique in its longevity, scope, and impact. It has changed how we think about child safety, media responsibility, and the complex intersection of private tragedy and public interest. Thanks for watching. How do you feel about these arguments and theories? Does it give you a different perspective on the case? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive the latest notifications.